Well, hey there, writer. Welcome to the Resilient Writers Radio Show. I'm your host, Rhonda Douglas, and this is the podcast for writers who want to create and sustain a writing life they love. Because, let's face it, the writing life has its ups and downs, and we want to not just write, but also to be able to enjoy the process, so that we'll spend more time with our butt in chair getting those words on the page. This podcast is for writers who love books and everything that goes into the making of them. For writers who want to learn and grow in their craft and improve their writing skills. Writers who want to finish their books and get them out into the world so their ideal readers can enjoy them. Writers who want to spend more time in that flow state. Writers who want to connect with other writers to celebrate and be in community in this crazy roller coaster ride we call the writing life. We are resilient writers. We're writing for the rest of our lives, and we're having a good time doing it. So welcome, writer. I'm so glad you're here. Let's jump right into today's show. Well, hey there, writer. Welcome back to another episode of the Resilient Writers Radio Show. So today I have Whitney Cubbison with me. She is a dual American and French citizen living in Paris since 2009. Hashtag living the dream. She grew up in Texas and California, and she got a degree in French from UCLA. And she was working with high-tech PR agencies in San Francisco and worked with Microsoft for 16 years, and including in the Paris office. After she left Microsoft, she completed her first novel, Will There Be Wine, which is a story deeply inspired by her own experience as an expat divorcee living in Paris, navigating the cultural minefield of dating in a foreign country. And that came out in 2023. And she had so much fun, she wrote a sequel, which became Will There Be Love? So we're going to talk about those books and Whitney's life in Paris. Whitney, you were living my dream life. I just have to say that.
Well, somebody's got to do it, Rhonda. It might as well be me.
Might as well be you. Totally. I love it. So talk to me a little bit about, so when you went to Paris originally, you were working with Microsoft. Did you think of yourself as a writer?
So I worked in communications at Microsoft, so I was always writing something.
Right.
And from a very young age, I was always a journaler. So I think I was always writing something. I never really thought, gosh, one day I'm going to write a novel. And then I moved here. I was working for Microsoft. I was a speechwriter for the head of international sales. That's the job that I moved here for. So I was writing his speeches and doing all of his comms work. And then I got divorced and started going on a bunch of really horrible dates. And and every single time I would come back to my friends and tell these stories about what was happening, they were like, oh my God, you have to write a book. This is ridiculous. And I mean, one of the guys, actually, I remember he said, you know what? It was a Microsoft comms guy. He said, I know great stories, and these are great stories. You must write a book. And I was like, And I started thinking about it just very casually. And one day I just started writing. And I think I was on a plane coming back from a work trip and just started writing down some of the real stuff that had actually happened to me. And really having no idea how to write a novel, because it turns out, you'll be surprised to hear that writing about cloud computing is very different than writing a novel.
Totally,
and,
yes.
I kind of had to unlearn all of my skills as a technology PR writer to figure out how to do this. And so when I started, I had absolutely no idea what I was doing. And I think this probably happens with a lot of first-time novelists that are somewhat inspired to write by things that are happening to them. And so they vomit their life out onto a page, which is exactly what I did, and then go, okay, now what? And have to figure it out. But that was the fun part.
Okay. Figuring out was the fun part. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I love, your website is datingdisasters.paris. Just so like best URL ever. So
that's actually the character in the book has a blog. And so that is the URL for the blog.
I love that.
And so I always had this thing whenever I was watching a TV show or movie and there was a character that had their Instagram account or their whatever website, I often would go and check just to see, like, is that a real one? Do they really have that? Are they playing this character through till the end? And most times they weren't. And it felt to me like a missed marketing opportunity. So I was like, I'm going to do that. I'm going to do it right. And so that's where that URL came from.
That's so perfect. So, are you the protagonist, or did you create a protagonist that was kind of like you, or not at all like you?
So the name of the character is the protagonist in the first book is Austin, and Austin is very much me. There are a few little details that I changed just, for the sake of fiction, but she is very much based on me. And I'll say that, when I wrote the first book, I didn't necessarily intend to write another or
Mm,
to stick with her. And the second book we'll get to it, I'm sure, a bit more later, but she is in there. She's not the main character of the second book. But the
mhm.
second book is 100% fiction, and so is the third, which I'm writing now. And she's in it, and so her character has definitely evolved away from me. I
Right.
think she still has a lot of the personality traits that I would have if I were in some of these scenarios. But as the scenarios got further from my real life, she became more of a character and less of me. But yeah, I think she's
But you
very very
started with
close.
something close to you and then it evolved. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love that. So let's talk about Will There Be Wine? How did it end up? Why that title? Although, you're in Paris, you're dating. Will There Be Wine? Yes. Oh, great, great cover. Love.
Thank you.
So
This
good.
is actually the whole string of like guys that she's scrolling through on the app.
Ah,
And it's like, no, 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 maybe. That was kind of the
I love
design,
it.
the red
So
shirts
good.
versus the yellow shirt on that.
That's perfect.
Honestly, the title came from my best friend in Paris, who is the Daphne character in this book is based on her. And she often joked well before I started writing this book that if they ever made a movie about our lives, it would be called Will There Be Wine?
Okay.
And
Love it.
so because we're always, we live in Paris, and so we're always out drinking wine, at some point. And so yeah, when I started writing it, I was like, I think that has to be the title because I was sort of manifesting the maybe it'll be made into a movie, and
Mm,
who knows?
yeah.
But yeah, it very much came from her, just that being the tagline of our day-to-day life in Paris. And
Love it.
funny enough, like the second one, which is called Will There Be Love, it seems like such an obvious evolution
Mhm,
for a sequel. But I was
mhm.
really struggling with the title on the second one because I thought that it should have wine in it as a continuity. And
Oh,
so I
I
was like
see. Yeah,
trying to
yeah.
play around
Mhm.
with something for that. And I ended up meeting with this girl who was a friend of a friend who had come to Paris, and she had read the first book, and she had asked my friend if I would meet her for lunch because she enjoyed the first book. So we were sitting down and I was telling her about the second book, and I said, I'm really struggling with the title. And I kind of told her what it was about. This is a girl I had just met. And she was like, oh, it should be called Will There Be Love? And I was like, duh. Of course it
Okay.
should be. Like it was
So
such a
what's the title of
blazingly
the third one?
obvious.
Because you're
Sorry?
kind of rocking I'm curious about the title of the third one because you're rocking a Will There Be
Yes.
Blank?
The third one is called Will There Be Time?
Yeah, oh, I love that. Okay. So in the first book,
Yes.
these are rom-coms, right?
The first one is a rom-com. The second one
Okay.
I like to call a rom-dram.
Rom-dram. Okay, a little more drama
A
happening.
lot more drama. So the
A lot
first
more.
one is really about the dating misadventures of an American expat in Paris. It is
Right,
kind of, it starts out where Paris is supposed to be the city of love. It's where everybody comes and falls in love, and it's where Austin Keller's marriage died.
right.
That's kind of where that story starts. And then it goes through all these misadventures of terrible dates. And so it's
Mhm.
like whoever said Paris was the most romantic city on earth was obviously lying. Like, what is happening
Right,
right now? So it's this kind of comedy of errors of her searching for love and also searching for self. And because when you're doing your own story, basically, I was like thinking about it after going, okay, how do I make it a novel and not just a
Mhm.
random series of anecdotes?
Yes.
And so I
Yeah.
had to really think about like what are the messages that I want to leave with people? What do I want readers to take away from this book? And it was really about getting to know who you are in a post-divorce scenario, getting to know who the new you is, who you
Mhm.
want to be, who you want to be braver to be,
Yeah.
and
Mhm.
how your friends kind of come in and support you and lift you up and through all of these kind of trials and tribulations of figuring out who you are and what your life is supposed to be in a place that you didn't expect it to have to restart. And so that theme of female friendship and that theme of really self-discovery and knowing yourself and being honest about that, those were kind of things that had to pull through to make it kind of stick together and to make it
Mhm.
not just like slapstick, which is kind of where it started, but not where I
Yeah.
wanted it to end.
Right. Yeah, because there needs to be a character journey, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So in writing the second one, and you said, okay, it's got more drama. Why the shift?
Couple reasons. So the first one, the story kind of takes place over the course of several years, like 5 years-ish, 5 or 6 years. And I really liked the idea of writing a book that mostly took place over the course of a weekend. I wanted
Mm.
to do something that was much more compressed.
Oh,
Because one of
okay.
the big pieces of feedback I got on the first one was people really liked the dialogue, and I really like writing dialogue. And
Okay.
so I was like, I want to do something that's very conversational, that's very, character driven, that's in a closed space
Hmm.
where something is happening. And that kind of lent itself more to drama. And I also didn't want Austin to be the main character. The whole
Hmm.
idea of the second book actually started, I was having a conversation with a girlfriend here in Paris, and she was telling me that her parents never told her that they loved her. And so as a result, she was having a hard time saying it to her husband and her kid. And I found that so heartbreaking that I really kind of sat with that for a while and was thinking about like love and how easily it can either lift you up or F you
Mm.
up,
Yeah.
in one
Yeah.
context or the other.
Yeah.
And as a perpetually single girl myself,
Right.
still,
Right.
I have thought a lot about the hierarchy of romantic love versus platonic love amongst friends
Mm.
versus familial love, and how all of these
Mm.
elements can kind of mix together to make a great life, no matter if you're with
Yeah.
someone or not. And so
Yeah.
I wanted to look at that topic a bit more seriously. And so it was not going to be a comedy
Yeah.
at the end of the day. And so it basically takes place, most of it, over the course of the 40th birthday of this character, Ophelia. She goes to
Okay.
Ibiza with her husband and a group of friends for her 40th birthday. Turns out one of the friends isn't a friend and is actually her husband's mistress.
Ah, fun.
Much drama ensues.
Much
But
fun.
it's so she, Ophelia, is actually, well, so Austin ends up at the end of the first book with a guy. And for no
Right.
spoilers, I call him Keanu. It's not really his
Okay.
name. But so,
Okay.
so Ophelia is Keanu's first love. So she's the main
Ooh,
character
okay.
of the next book. And so it kind of juxtaposes her relationship with her husband, where they have a marriage in crisis, against Austin and her guy, who are just falling in love. So it's
Okay.
kind of about where it starts and ends and what builds it and what breaks it, but told through the
Right.
lens of these two couples that are in very
Yeah.
different places in their
Yeah.
relationships. And it's four-part narrator, which was my other challenge I wanted
Oh,
to take on.
four-part point of view.
Yes. So all four of them,
That's challenging.
yes, all four of them are narrators. And so that was my other thing that I really wanted to do differently. I wanted a compressed time frame. I wanted not one narrator.
Okay.
And I wanted to do drama. So yeah, very different
Wow.
book in the end. So standalone sequel can be read
Right.
completely standalone, but very different book in the end.
Wow. Okay. So what were the biggest craft challenges for the first book and then the second book?
Craft challenges, you mean just like figuring out how to do it?
Like, oh my God, what am I doing? Yeah.
Ah, yeah. I mean, like I said, I really, for the first one, just vomited my life out onto a page and
Yeah.
then was like, okay, now what? And I literally like went on Facebook and maybe LinkedIn and said, so I wrote a book. Does anybody know anybody in publishing? Like, I don't know what to do now.
Oh my
Like,
God.
I just kind
Okay.
of threw it out to the universe
Yeah.
and ended up being put in touch with, various friends of friends and whatever, and who gave me amazing advice. And the number one piece of advice was hire a professional editor.
Okay.
And so I went to Readsy and I
Yeah.
found an editor and I was like, I just need a structural edit because I don't
Okay.
know how to make this like a book. Because at the time it was kind of like one chapter per guy ish.
Right. Okay.
And within sort of the more significant chapters, there may have been a little bit of flashback or a little bit of
Right.
flash forward. And she
Right.
was like,
Yeah.
you can't keep track of the timeline like that. It's impossible. You need to break that up and have those things occur in sequence. So when he comes back, it's like, oh, he's back. Maybe now is when they will. And you're like, yeah, well, duh. That makes so much sense
Right.
when you think about it logically, but when you're
Right.
vomiting your life onto a page, it doesn't necessarily come as an inherent truth of what you're supposed to do. So I hired that structural editor who gave me some amazing feedback about, and I ended up tearing the book apart, adding about 30,000 words, and then stitching it back together
Yeah.
to
Love
like
that.
change the
Love it.
timeline.
Yeah.
And then I went and pitched for agents, and I had initial interest from five, which was very exciting. And then all five of them said no
Ugh.
eventually. And what that said to me was, it's a good idea, but it's not executed well enough. So then I went and hired another editor to
Whoa.
do what I thought was what I hired her for was a copy edit. And she ends up missing the deadline. And I contacted her. I was like, hi, where's my book? She was like, the thing is, she said, I just loved your story so much. I didn't want to miss an opportunity to help make it great. So I've gone in and done a partial line edit. And I was like,
Oh,
no.
nice. Okay.
So she had line edited a random third of the book in different places saying, here's how to basically make this work. And when I read her edits, I was like, oh, now I know how to do
Mhm.
this. And I basically
Yeah.
rewrote the whole book.
Okay. Wow.
And so her edits it was like the scales fell off of my eyes and I was
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
oh, okay, I got it now. Like I know what
Okay.
this needs.
Yeah.
And then I just had so much fun. I've worked with her on all three books since because I think she's phenomenal.
Mm.
But it was like, I literally had no idea how to write a novel. So all
Yeah.
of it was hard on the first on the
Mhm.
first one, like literally everything. Because, once you figure out how to get it written, then you have to figure out like I remember like in the editing process, it was like in Reedsy, it was like, what kind of edit do you want? I'm like, I don't know. What do
I
any of
didn't
these
know there
edits
were
mean?
kinds. Who knew there were kinds? Yeah.
Yeah, who knew? And then it was like you're plugging in all the details on Amazon. It's like, what do you want your trim size to be? And you're like Googling, what is trim size?
Right.
Like,
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
just had no idea about any of it. And so when you're self-publishing, you have to figure all this stuff out on your own. And so everything was an adventure on the
Yeah.
first one.
Love it.
The second one, I mean, I think one of the bigger ones was writing in a guy's voice, two different guys' voices, and trying to
Okay.
figure out how to like get out of my own head because the first one was so much based on a character that was me
With you. Yeah.
that, I had to like really break down who are these other people. And so because I worked at Microsoft for 16 years, I spent, I think, the, a month or two in an Excel spreadsheet on a character map. Just
Mm.
thinking through, okay, who are these 8 people that are going to be in the villa? How do they know each other? What are their personality flaws? What are their
Hmm.
jobs? What do they look like? What are their ages? Like, really kind of thinking through what is their kind of life motto? Like, who are
Right.
they?
Hmm.
And once I figured out kind of who they all were to each other and within themselves, I'm not a plotter, so I didn't have the plot really, but I just was like, I need to spend some time getting to know the people.
Yeah.
And then I started writing. And so that was really, an interesting thing too, because it was the first time I had tried pure fiction, that I had, started from a blank page. But
Yeah.
I wrote the first draft in 2 months. It just poured out of me.
Well, you had a blank page, but you also had like a pretty significant spreadsheet where you really thought through who these characters
Yeah.
were. So, you
Yeah.
go in like fully informed. I know who these people are. Yeah.
Yeah,
And
but it
writing
was
the
it was
characters
really
together.
fun. I mean, I just remember like closing my laptop at the end of every day, being like, I have no idea what happens next, but I'm going to bed. And then I would wake up the next day and sit down and be like, okay, here we go.
Okay.
Just
All
it was
right.
it was fun. I just had a great time, and I'm having a great time with the third one now. So I don't know. Like the first book really did not convince me that I was a writer. The first book, I was like 70% of it was real stuff that happened to me, and I did 30% of project management to turn my life into a book. That's kind of what I
Right,
thought.
right.
But I
Yeah.
didn't necessarily be like, oh, I'm a writer. And then on the second one, I was like, yeah, actually,
I
you know
think I'm a
what?
writer
I
now.
think I'm a
Yeah. Okay.
writer. So
Yeah.
that was a really fun
Yeah.
discovery, I guess, in the process of the
Yeah.
second one.
So are you a working writer now? Like this is what you do?
This is what I do. Yes.
Wow.
Um,
So the thing about self-publishing is you're also the marketing department. Now you
yes.
had worked in comms
Yes.
at Microsoft, so I'm assuming you've had a lifelong exposure to PR marketing. But talk to me a little about the kinds of things that you do to promote your book.
Sure. So, yes, my whole career was in PR marketing.
Yeah.
So that definitely helped. And when I was evaluating that, like, oh, can I pull this off as a self-published author, knowing that that was going to be part of the job, I was
Right.
like, yeah, you know what, I can figure this out. And I did hire for a while, for the first, I don't know, yearish, I worked with a book
Okay.
publicist,
Nice.
to try to learn the ropes because book marketing and cloud computing marketing are quite different in the end.
Yeah.
Again. So I did work with somebody to kind of help me learn the ropes. My Instagram is my main marketing vehicle. It's where I do most of my stuff. I try to do a lot of podcasts and pitch
Yeah.
that kind of stuff when I can, just because I enjoy it and I think it's a great way to bust into new audiences that you might not
Totally.
otherwise
Mhm. Yeah.
have met. And it's not just writing podcasts. What's been fun is I can do dating. Like I've done quite a few with dating coaches.
Hmm.
or like psychologists who talk about dating after
Yeah.
divorce, or I've
Yeah.
done, a lot of Paris-based podcasts about, creativity in Paris, or
Yeah.
just like life in Paris. And so
Yeah.
I'm thinking, and things like midlife career transition, it's
I love working the angles. That's
yes.
great. That's such amazing advice. You
Yeah.
don't
So I
have to
think you
just
do
be on
have to
all the
think
book
of,
podcasts. Yeah.
yeah, you have to think about yourself as the talent, which is obnoxious as that sounds, to say like
Yeah.
there are things that I have done in my life that I have a certain amount of expertise on, and it's not just about the book that I wrote, it's about all
Mhm.
these other aspects of life. And so where are the audiences of people who might be interested in a story like yours,
Mhm.
the book or your actual life, and then how do you like use those things to talk? And like one of the examples here in Paris, there's a journalist who does a column on, it's called Leaving America, and it's just
Mhm.
about people who have left the US to move to France, and it has nothing to do with anything other than like why and how people got here. And I'm like, okay, yeah, I'm gonna go pitch that because I can talk about what brought me here and get the books plugged as well.
Totally.
And so, it's just really about like having that 360-degree view of all the opportunities. But from a
Mhm.
pure book marketing standpoint, Instagram has been my main focus. The Bookstagram community has been amazing.
Bookstagram is the best.
I
They
mean,
blow my book budget every single day.
yeah, seriously.
Yeah.
And they're so generous and kind. And when I figured out kind of how it worked, I remember like because the title of the first book was Will There Be Wine, I was looking for handles like Books and Wine 2022 or,
Right. Right. Yeah.
Paperbacks and Pinot. I was like,
Yeah.
okay, I think these people are going to like the book just on the
Right.
title. And
Mhm.
so I did my research kind of based on the wine angle plus books, which for,
Yeah.
there's a lot of women out there who like wine and books. And so that was kind
Yeah.
of an easy start. And then once I think I got about 20 ARC readers
Wow.
before the first book came out. And what I told myself is, okay, I'm going to go through that process. I'm going to see how those reviews land in the week that the book comes out. If they're all mediocre, then I will accept that only my friends will ever read this book and move on to something else. But if they're good, then maybe I'll double down on marketing and figure out what it could be. And the reviews were excellent. And so I then started basically almost monthly rounds of reviews where I looked at the comments on those first 20 ARC reviews, where if somebody was like, oh, this looks like a cute one, then I would reach out to them and offer to them a free copy to join the next round of
Okay.
reviews. And so I
Okay.
did sort of monthly themed review rounds
Love
for
it.
many of the first 12 months on that book.
Yeah.
Um, and that worked really well to just like grow that base. And so then obviously by the time the second one came out, I had an established group of readers that I could then go back to.
Right.
And having several of them be like, "Oh, I don't even care what it's about. You wrote it? Yes, I'll read it." It's like, oh, okay, whew, that's good. That feels good.
Yeah. That's
So
awesome.
Instagram has been great. Podcasts have been great. I've tried Amazon ads. I've tried a bunch of other things. For me, I have felt like the most effective things have really been podcasts and Instagram.
Okay, love that.
Yeah.
But I want to say, like, the reviews were good because you put the work in, right? Like you vomited it, and then you were like, I don't know what this is, and then you got an editor, and then and then you pitched it, and it wasn't getting picked up, so like you got another edit, like you did the work. That's
I
why
did.
reviews were good, Whitney.
Thank you. I
Yeah.
appreciate that. I did do the work, and I'm very proud of the work. But it's interesting too because I think as a reader also
Mhm.
I have the way that I read now is different as a writer because I'm reading
Totally.
for what about this character or this book am I
Mhm.
liking, not liking, and why.
Mhm.
And so I'm
Mhm.
reading with a much more analytical lens on
Okay.
stuff now. And so even now, which is just 3 years after that first book came out, I look back on it and I'm like, God, I would do that book so differently today
Yeah, yeah,
if
totally.
I were to start over. And I think that's such an interesting evolution too, to
Yeah.
see how like your own brain kind of processes all these things as you get smarter and get to know the industry more and get to know what sells. And
Yeah.
I read a lot of stuff that bestsellers, and I'm like reading them going, why is this a bestseller? Like I don't
I
get it.
know. Yeah, same.
Like
Yeah.
it is
Yeah,
so
yeah.
not something that appeals to me, but it's something that appeals to the market. And so then you spend time thinking, well, should I be writing to market or should I be writing about what I love? And
Mhm.
ultimately, I just decided it has to be the latter.
Has to be what you love because you can't predict the market. Like by the time you get your book out into the world, the market might have changed.
Exactly. And also, like, especially as a self-published author, you spend so much time editing the book, like infinitely more time editing than writing it in the first place. And or I do anyway. And like, do you really want to be spending all that time on something that you don't love? And the answer is no.
Yeah, the answer is
definitely
no.
don't.
So I have one final question for you because I just can't resist. When you were writing the first book, were you tempted to go on, like, to choose men that you knew were probably going to be a disaster date just to get material for the book?
There is one in particular where that is a true yes. Yeah. And it is hilariously the one that I do as a reading most when I'm doing events was this date. And it was a date where the guy literally, like right before, an hour before we were supposed to meet, he texts me and he says, so how does it feel to have a date with the best looking guy in the 15th arrondissement? And I was like, wow, like normally I would have just canceled, like straight up right then. But then I was like,
you were like, this is
to the book, I'm going. And it was an absolute train wreck, and it has become my favorite reading to do at my book events. So thanks to that guy.
Yeah, thanks to that guy, the best looking guy in the 50s.
But other than that, no, honestly, other than that, they were all just like really bad dates that I had hope wouldn't be and were.
Yeah. I love that. That's so good. All right, we're going to put links to the books in the show notes and a link to Dating Disasters Paris as well, so you can find Whitney. Yeah, look at those gorgeous covers. It's fabulous. Yeah.
Thank you.
All right, thanks so much for being here with me, Whitney. I really appreciated the conversation.
Thanks for having me. It was fun.
Thanks so much for hanging out with me today and for listening all the way to the end. I hope you enjoyed today's episode of the Resilient Writers Radio Show. While you're here, I would really appreciate it if you'd consider leaving a rating and review of the show. You can do that in whatever app you're using to listen to the show right now, and it just takes a few minutes. Your ratings and reviews tell the podcast algorithm gods that yes, this is a great show. Definitely recommend it to other writers. And that will help us reach new listeners who might need a boost in their writing lives today as well. So please take a moment and leave a review. I'd really appreciate it, and I promise to read every single one. Thank you so much.